Okay, let's kick things off. For those who have just joined us, thank you again for joining us for today's webinar, the SEO Sanity Check. Are you following best practice? Let's start by meeting the panel. Today I am pleased to introduce Craig Bailey, who's an independent SEO consultant and an elcom partner. I'm sure a few of you on the call today have worked with him and know how fantastic he is. So he'll be walking us through today's presentation, and he'll tell you a little bit more about himself when he kicks off. For those of you who missed my name earlier, my name is Licia. I am elcom's marketing manager, and I will be acting as today's moderator. No doubt you'll have some questions during the course of the presentation. To ask your questions, feel free to type out your question in this panel here that you can see. I'll collate these and we'll answer them during the question and answer session at the end of the event. You can also join in the conversation using our hashtag elcomSEO, and you can also follow us using elcomCMS, and you can follow Craig at Craig Bailey as well. To receive regular invites and updates on elcom, you can like us or follow us on our Facebook and LinkedIn pages. Okay, without further ado, let me welcome Craig to start this great event, the SEO Sanity Check. Are you following best practice? Over to you, Craig.
All right, thanks, Licia, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Nice to have you along. I'll just, as Licia said, I'll quickly tell you about myself and then what we're going to cover today. So, as Licia mentioned, I'm an independent SEO consultant. I've worked in IT for more than 20 years now, and a fair bit of that has been as a web developer, and then in the last 4 to 5 years my focus has really been about the business side of web development and kind of looking at web strategy in general. And of course, a big part of that is SEO, focusing on SEO there. And so now I deal with a number of clients in Australia and the US across a range of industries and sizes, from small businesses through to enterprises. And I also have a number of sites of my own, and I kind of think having skin in the game, I guess, so to speak, is useful way I've kind of cut my teeth on learning SEO on my own sites. So that's a little bit about me. Let's have a look at what we're going to cover today. And there's really 4 main areas I want to cover today. So the first part is kind of an overview of SEO. I really want to set the context there. We'll cover on-page versus off-page. I want to talk about how SEO should be part of your overall marketing strategy. And in particular, I want to focus on conversions, and that focusing on results is really what SEO is all about. Then the second part, we'll dive into a few details on on-page SEO. On-page is really going to be our focus for today. And then after that, we'll look at how some of those on-page factors are implemented in elcomCMS. So if you're currently using elcomCMS, this will be useful in terms of learning how to implement some of the things. If you are evaluating elcomCMS, this will give you a little bit of insight into the SEO features in the product. I deal with a number of different content management systems, including the elcom system, and the elcomCMS is quite user-friendly, I'm happy to say, which is kind of rare in the enterprise space at least, so that's quite good. And then the fourth part of what I want to cover today is really the process or the checklist that I want to leave you with. And this is really about taking action. I kind of think sometimes we can get bogged down on learning and information and theory, but really what I want to enable you to do is at the end of the webinar, you can go away and actually get some things happening, get a little process going. And SEO, as you probably know, is really about, it's an ongoing process. It's about continual incremental improvement, I kind of like to say. So that's what we're going to cover. So I guess where we've pitched this webinar is really as a kind of a back to basics and making sure that you're following the right process. So I'm assuming that you know why SEO is important. I'm not going to try and convince you on why you should be investigating SEO or showing you stats about numbers of searches or any of that. I'm going to assume that you know SEO is important and you actually want to get started implementing it. You've probably actually already done some reading around SEO. You might have even played around with a few things and you are implementing some stuff. And really this webinar is about helping to make sure you're focusing on the important things. Now, if you're a complete novice, then this might be a lot to take in, but I would encourage you to stick with it, okay? So, and at the end, there's some time for questions, so please take advantage of that. It'll be worth it. And at the other end of the spectrum, if you're quite advanced on SEO, then you're probably not going to learn anything new here. However, I would recommend you consider this as a kind of back to basics refresher. If you're like me and you're doing a lot of SEO, there's hundreds of different strategies that you're following. Sometimes you just need to take a step back and say, right, let's focus back on the basics and make sure we've got them covered. So that's where it's aimed at. Let's dive into our first section, which is really an overview of SEO. And I just kind of want to set the context here. I'm going to talk about the two main components of SEO, on-page and off-page. Or internal versus external is probably a good way to look at it. I really want to highlight today the importance of conversions and making sure you're measuring your results, measuring the effect of what you're doing and getting results. And I really want to stress that SEO should be part of your overall marketing strategy. So let's actually just start there and talk about marketing in general. Now, I actually wouldn't refer to myself as a marketer, okay? So this is a very simplistic kind of look at marketing, deliberately so, just to set a bit of context today. So it's very simplified, but I like to think of marketing as kind of online and offline. So offline is kind of your events, your trade shows, your brochures, bus advertising, whatever. Online is more about your focus on websites and email and social. Now when it comes to online, again I've simplified this, but I'd like to think in four kinds of buckets really. There's the paid advertising, which you do in your online marketing. That's Google AdWords, banner ads, other advertising networks, etc. You've got direct, which is more your email marketing. You've got social, of course, and then you've got SEO, which is the organic side. It's getting your rankings up in Google, Bing, Yahoo, and any of the hundreds of other search engines that are around the world. And that's really where we're focusing today. And I guess the point that I wanted to make with this slide is because I often see people or companies push SEO out as this kind of black art or unknown, and they remove it from their overall marketing. And I think that dilutes the effect. And really we want to have constant messaging around all our marketing and ensuring that the SEO component contributes to that. So that's a very quick setting of context. Some common terms that you may be aware of and be reading up are things like inbound marketing, which is very popular at the moment. We don't have time to cover it today, but that's something that you should investigate. I'm a big fan. It's effective, and content marketing is a part of that as well. I've got some links later in the slide deck with some resources on that. But that's just to set context. So I guess here's the simplified diagram: marketing, and within online there's SEO. SEO is our organic traffic, and in a minute we'll look at on-page versus off-page SEO. But just before we do that, I just really wanted to talk about this idea of conversions. I think this is very important. As we look at building our web traffic, I see people sometimes fixating on rankings, and while that's important, it's not the end result. We need rankings to drive our traffic, of course, and we want to get good traffic. But really what we want to be focusing on are conversions. It's no good having a lot of traffic if it's the wrong kind of traffic. So when we look at conversions, that could be any one of a number of things, and it depends on your business. So for example, if you're in online, then a conversion is more focused on selling a product. If you're on the enterprise space, then it's probably getting leads into your sales pipeline. But you can see there's a range of things that could be conversions or results or goals, as we call them. And you need to think through carefully what a conversion is in your business. I've got some other examples there, and it could even be just getting engagement on your site. If your business model is selling advertising on your site, then engagement could be your conversion. So there's some ideas. There's plenty more. Now, when it comes to conversions, there are a number of tools. In fact, there's a lot of tools, but I'm really just going to limit today's discussion to be talking about Google Analytics. I think most people are familiar with it, and you really should install some kind of analytics package on your website so that you can measure. It's all about test and measure. Okay, so Google Analytics is a good one. You can set up goals and report on conversions. So I'll just quickly, I'm not going to show you how to set this up now. We don't have time for that, but in Google Analytics, you would go to your admin settings, you'd choose the profile, and then you'd set up goals. You can set up to around 20 goals in Google Analytics at the moment. And then you would report on them. This is actually a screenshot from one of my clients. So I've had to blur out some of the areas just for privacy. But you can dig into standard analytics reports that talk about conversions and those conversion goals. And later, I'll be showing you how you can dig into the keywords that are giving you the best conversions. Okay, so that's a little bit about conversions. It's very important. It needs to be the focus of all your efforts. Otherwise, if you're getting the wrong kind of traffic, you're kind of wasting all that effort you're putting in. Okay, so let's set the context. Let's have a look at SEO. And I really want to just highlight the two main areas of SEO. There's on-page SEO, which is the stuff you do on your site. So you've got content on your site and you manage that content. So on-page content management, on-page SEO is optimizing the stuff on your site. Off-page, which is also really important, is about getting links to your site, so from other sites. So really, if we break it down, we've got on-page or on-site SEO versus off-page. And on the left-hand side, you can see a list of the content items that we can manage, content manage these items for our on-page SEO. And on the right-hand side, there's off-site. There's any number of different ways you can get links to your site. And this is very important. There's just a few of the common ones that I've listed here. And what we're really going to cover today is what's on the left-hand side, on-page SEO. But I do want to highlight how important off-page is. All right, it sometimes gets underestimated by people, but it is actually very important. And it's this idea about building links to your site. So I'm just going to quickly cover that for a minute or so, just to highlight it, and then we'll get back to on-page. Now, off-page, let me give you an example to highlight why this is important. It's a common example. It's called the click here example. You might have seen it before. But here's a Google search for the term click here. Okay, I don't know why you'd search on that, but anyway. Now, what you'll notice is that the first result is Adobe Reader. And what's funny about this is if you actually go to the Adobe Reader site, the term click here doesn't appear anywhere on that page. And I can tell you as an SEO that they're not optimizing this page to rank for the term click here. Okay? So the question is, well, why do they rank for it? And the reason is because of the way people link to their site. So here's just a few examples. You'll see there when people link to Adobe Reader, go and download it, they use quite often this link with the kind of text or label that says click here. Now, Google, in their wisdom, when they go crawling through all of these sites, they kind of see that so many different sites are linking off to Adobe Reader with the term click here. They think, well, that's a good indication of what that site's all about, and therefore it affects their ranking algorithm, and before you know it, Adobe Reader ranks for the term click here. So that's kind of an extreme example, but I just wanted to highlight it to you and just make it clear that links are important. So links and off-page is important, but really we want to get back to talking about on-page today. Now, the reason we want to look at on-page is when you think from Google's eyes, they really want to provide users with relevant content. So how do they find relevant content for a user's search? Well, we can help Google in that regard. So let's actually talk about content. And I think content is important. It's at a minimum, you need some decent content on your site before you can optimize the on-page items for it. And really what we're going to look at is with the content on our site, we really want to be highlighting or using a few on-page elements to our advantage. Now, Google, as you know, has a very complex algorithm that it uses for its to show its results, and there are literally hundreds of SEO factors that it uses. Okay, now we can't possibly cover all of them today, so I'm just highlighting a few of the most important ones, and those are those there: title tags, headings, images, URL structure. We're going to look at meta description as well, even though that's actually not a ranking factor, but it's important. I'll tell you why in a second. And then we're going to look at some redirects and sitemaps in terms of architecture for the site. So let's look at an actual search result. So I've just searched for a term here, Enterprise Web Content Management Systems, and you'll see you're familiar with this kind of Google listing. Now, the first thing I want to do for the discussion is just get you to ignore all the ads. Now, you might not be aware of this, but all of that stuff that I've shaded in red is paid advertising on Google, and it's not related to SEO. So just ignore that for this discussion. And then we're left in the, I guess, in the clean area there, we're left with our organic results. These are the terms that we think about when we talk about ranking, the results that rank. So number one is Wikipedia, and number two is actually the elcom site. And I just want you to notice a few things that stand out in that listing. So you'll see actually some of the terms that we searched for appear in various parts there. Some are more important than others. And actually, even though you can't quite see it, but in the green URL, some of the terms appear there as well. So let's actually have a look at what page links, if we were to click through that link, and how some of those words there in the result might be appearing. So if we look, this is the actual page that if you'd clicked it would have gone through to. You'll see a few things that I've outlined there. Now, right up at the top of the page is, I guess, the window title or the browser title or the page title as its actual proper name. And we often refer to these as title tags. It's actually the correct term is page title, but we call them title tags often. And that's really important, and I'm going to come back to this one in a second because it is the most important item. But you'll see a few other things there. You can see in the URL we've got keywords there, and the heading there, content management, actually on the page. And if I were to use a little tool to kind of analyze the page, this is just a screenshot from a little browser plugin that I use. I've got a link to this later. It actually highlights a number of the elements on the page. You can see the URL there and the page title and how those terms are included. And so what I'm going to do in the next couple of slides is just talk you through what each of these are, and then in the next section we're going to talk about how you would implement these or configure these in the elcomCMS system. Okay, so let's have a look at titles, and this I've kind of superimposed the elcom site itself over the top of the Google results. So you can see there, that's really where it's pulled the title from and shows that in the actual Google result listing. So Google's pulling that. You'll notice it's kind of trimmed, and that's because the title tag that Google displays it's approximately 65 characters. And so with that little space, you should be aiming to put your most important keywords first. Okay? And one thing you might notice, I get asked the question, should I put my brand name as the first part of my title tag? And the answer is it depends, which is why I haven't actually put it as an actual rule on the presentation. But more so than not, I'm telling clients to put their brand name, if they're an established site, at the end of title tags. And in fact, if I just go back a screen, you'll notice that the search term I used was actually a brand term, elcomCMS, and it still showed that title tag that relates to what Elcom offers. So Google's smart enough to link brand terms with your pages. So therefore, you don't necessarily have to include your title, your brand term in your title. Keep it at the end, and in most cases. If you've got a brand new site, that might not be the case. But if you've got an established site and your brand is known, then you can safely put that at the end of your title tags. Okay, so, and I'll show you how to set this up in Elcom in a little bit. But let's quickly look at an opportunity. This is an example of a site where they've got an opportunity to improve, shall we say. And you can see there their title is not at all optimized. And in fact, you know, on the insert, when you see the Google result, how it shows in Google, that's not doing them any favors. So that site there, they could really benefit from optimizing their title tags. Okay, let's move on just to some other important items. So we've covered title tag. Now I really want to talk about images. And in particular, this will be really useful for some businesses and less so for others. But let's say, for example, you're a site that is image heavy. And for an example, a good example of this might be a car maker. And I know actually one of Elcom's clients is actually a car maker. So let's say you've got models of cars that you highlight on your website. Quite often people will search for those kind of images of a model. So this alt tag is something that you can assign to images. And you might, it stands for alternative text tag, because Google can't obviously read what's in an image. So we give them a little bit of help with these alt text items. So if you're a car maker, you might want to make sure that your models of cars all have their image alt tags in place, so that if someone does an image search, your image comes up, they might click through to your site, and that could be part of their involvement in your sales funnel. So not important for all sites, but for some it will be very important. And the reason I wanted to mention it early is because it's often overlooked by people. So if that's relevant to you, make sure you're using it. On the other hand, if you're just a site with generic stock images, it won't be as important for you. All right, moving on. Now, headings are very important in terms of SEO. They give a good hint to Google about what the page is about, and therefore Google might use that in how it ranks the page. The key here is to use your keywords in headings, but don't go overboard. I sometimes see people try and get their keywords, they're stuffing it into every paragraph. It's referred to as keyword stuffing. They try and overuse the term. It still needs to be readable, but very useful to use that as well. URLs are another thing that you can use to your advantage. Here's an example from Elcom's site where they've used the URL to kind of guide Google in terms of how the site might be categorized, and that matches their breadcrumbs and their side menus as well. Now, you've probably all seen those really ugly URLs that are full of numbers and letters and question marks and things like that, and they're kind of unreadable. That Google, I guess, finds it easier to read them than a human would, but they're still not doing any favors in terms of helping Google find your content. So this is a much better way. They're called SEO friendly or pretty URLs, so make sure you use those as well. Now I'm just going to take a little step aside and look at the meta description. And I want to highlight that as far as we know, these aren't used as part of Google's algorithm for ranking, so they don't affect your rankings. But why they're really important is that they affect click-throughs. So here's an example, and my question really is, out of those three descriptions there, which one would you click on? Which one is most inviting? Now, I'm not going to say which one I think is better because it's more a personal thing. My point is not to say which one's good or bad. My point is to say, here's your chance to tailor a call to action. So use these to your advantage. People get a list of results. If your description there is compelling, they'll be more inclined to click through. All right. I want to talk about redirects as well. This is very important if you're, sorry, something's just popped up. Just try and hide that. This is very important if you update URLs on your site. So that kind of address, the URL address that people visit, if that changes, it's important that you have redirects. Now I want to highlight this because this is probably one of the biggest problems I see with my clients. What happens is they design a brand new site, they spend a lot of time and money with a great new design, excellent new content, new kind of layout and structure to the site. They spend a lot of time. It's a beautiful new site. They go live, and because all the URLs of the new site have changed, all their old URLs end up giving, all their old URLs end up going to errors, and that's bad. Bad for user experience, but also bad because Google sees these errors and actually drops their site out of the index. And I've seen sites, new sites go live with completely new URLs and practically drop out of the Google index. So don't do that. What you need to do is set up 301 redirects. They're very simple to set up, and they're basically telling Google that your old page can now be found at this new location. All right. And I'll show you that in elcomCMS in a second as well. All right, so that's the main items we covered. We're actually just going to take a little breather here, and I'm going to hand back to Alicia, who's going to run a quick poll.
Okay, let's get some of your feedback. Which area are you currently focusing on? So let me just launch this. So click on the one that's most relevant to you. Which area are you currently focusing on? On-page, off-page, as Craig had described previously? A bit of both, 50-50, not sure, or none of the above, or no clear strategy at this moment in time. So click on which one is most relevant to you, and we'll take a look at the results. Very interesting. Okay. A couple more seconds, and then I'm going to close the poll and show you guys the results. Okay, closing the poll now, and we're going to share the results. So we've got 48% of the audience on page, on site. Only 7% looking at off page. About 26% a bit of both. 7% not sure, and 11% not looking at SEO at the moment, or no clear strategy.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Good to see people doing 50-50. That's good.
Okay, so I'll just close the poll results and hand it back over to Craig.
Okay, thank you. All right. So my screen's showing now. That's all good?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks for your feedback there on interesting poll results. We're now into the third, I'm going to go into the third section of the webinar today. So we've covered the intro to SEO, and we've looked at some of the on-page factors. And now let's look at how we might set those up in elcomCMS. And I'm going to go through the following items. This is just a subset of the things that you can do, but these are the important ones that we've covered. So what's interesting about title tags is that we can actually set a global title suffix, something to appear at the end of all title tags. And let me show you how that's done. If we, in the elcomCMS, oh, by the way, I should mention these screenshots are from the latest version of elcomCMS, so they might aesthetically look a little bit different to what you're used to, but the overall layout is pretty much the same. So global site settings you can get to from under your admin menu, and then there's this site name, and that actually gets appended to your title tags and is a global title tag suffix. So this is actually a really good way. This is where I would put your brand term. So for example, in this one, I'd probably get rid of the term website on the end of it. I don't know if that's useful unless it is part of the actual brand. Clean Power might be the brand. Just use that as the title suffix, global title suffix, and then it'll appear at the end of all your page titles. So then, when you actually go into the individual pages, the title tags, we set these on the attributes screen. Now, what's nice about elcomCMS is they separate the content from the actual attributes about the page. So if you've got content authors with certain permissions, they can edit your content. But perhaps as a manager, you want to manage the SEO attributes, and you can go into that and manage it there. And this is the page title here. Okay. So again, you'd put your most important terms at the start, and then you can just publish. And so set the title tag there. Now, while we're here, and let me just reiterate, the page title is the most important thing to get right. So make sure you're doing this on all your pages. But while we're on this, let's have a look at what's underneath. And this is the user-friendly URLs. Now, you can actually set the URL that's used for the pages. So I recommend you put your keywords in there as well. Elsewhere, you can actually set the words that are used in those folders. But make sure you use that to your advantage. Next, I want to talk about meta description. This is down in the metadata area, and you can see it there. That's that meta description. That's that call to action. Doesn't affect the rankings, as we discussed earlier, but it does affect the click-through, the call to action. So use this well. Now, there's a few other SEO items there on that page, the meta robot tags, canonical tag. We probably don't have time to go through those today. We'll see. I'll come back to this at the end if there's time. And this next one, also on the attributes, is the redirects. Remember, I was saying it was important that if a URL changes, that you redirect from the old location to the new one. So there we've got our user-friendly URL at the top. That's the new or the current URL. That's what's live. But those other ones down below, they're the old links. And if we didn't have those redirects in place, going to those old links might result in an error. So this is just telling, pointing the old link to the new link. So that's how easy that is to set up. Now, when we actually look at the content itself, so we're no longer in the attributes page, and when we're actually editing content of the article, there's headings, and you can apply styles. So headings, you can put in bullets, you can put in bolding, things like that to highlight terms in your page. That's where to use them. Alt tags, when you're uploading images, this is when you put in the alternative text tagging for your images there. So use them to your advantage. And here's a new one. This is the XML Sitemap. I didn't mention this earlier, but I do want to highlight it now. This is available under the admin menu. And what it allows you to do is generate an XML sitemap of all the pages on your site that you feel are important. And it's quite easy to enable. You just generate it there, and then you submit it to Google. And there's steps there on the page that actually guide you through how to do that. And you can also set this to automatically regenerate. So I normally set that to a page or two, and I save it to automatically allow that generation there at the bottom. And that just means that the purpose of this sitemap is to give Google a hint as to the pages on your site that you feel are important. So Google actually does a good job of crawling through sites, but with the sitemap, it just delivers it to, it's delivering up your pages on a plate, so to speak, for Google to index. So make sure you put that in place. So really, that's a quick summary of how the important items are implemented in elcomCMS. We've looked at the title tags, so make sure you use that global suffix. We've looked at URLs. We've looked at redirects. We did look at the meta description, although we know that's not a ranking factor. It is a click-through factor. We looked at headings, images, and sitemaps. Now, we're about to head into the last section. We're on the home stretch, okay? Thanks for hanging in so far. We're about to head into the actual process of checklist, but I did want to just highlight some common myths or misunderstandings that people have around SEO. Not that these are necessarily wrong, but just that they're not where I would recommend you put your main effort. Okay? So the first one is that people think that social interaction will boost their rankings. Now, there might be some influence on rankings, but it's small. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying it's very small, and therefore, if you've only got limited time and effort, don't expect social to be doing your SEO for you. Another one I see is that web standards are all I need to rank. People think that if their site passes validation, that somehow that makes it rank better. That's an easy one to disprove, because all you really need to do is go and look up any competitive term on Google, and I can practically guarantee that none of the pages will pass web standards validation at all. So if web standards were that important, that wouldn't be the case. But web standards are good. All I'm dispelling here is this idea that that's all you need to rank, and I do hear people saying this. The other one, as I mentioned earlier, keyword stuffing. That hasn't worked for a long time. This idea of just peppering your content with keywords, it actually reduces the user experience, and increasingly we're seeing Google is getting smarter about reading content, and they kind of actually demote pages that are stuffing keywords in there. So just 2 or 3 times using your keywords, make it readable is my recommendation. Use the terms, but make sure it's readable by the user. And the last one that I do see a bit is people thinking that if they use or pay for Google AdWords, that because they're paying Google, Google will reward them with increased organic rankings. And I can tell you that's not true. Google denies it repeatedly, and I've seen no evidence in testing that I've done and in discussions with other SEOs around the world that it has any influence. They're 2 entirely separate things. However, they can help indirectly. So if you're getting traffic to your site from whatever means, that can often give a good experience to people. They might link to your site later. They might recommend it to others. So they can help indirectly. But I just want to make sure that when you're spending effort and time on your SEO, you focus on the key things that we discussed earlier. All right, let's finish with a little checklist. And this is really what I'd like you to think about in your approach to SEO. And this, as I said earlier, is about taking action. I really want you to take action. I see clients that quite often they get bogged down in keyword research or all the nuances of SEO, and they spend so much time doing that that they don't actually implement anything. So I really want to encourage you to actually do something and then refine it. It's an ongoing process. So here's the checklist, and I'm going to go through each of these individually, but here's really what we want to do. We want to set up goals in analytics. We must be able to measure. We must be able to report on what we're doing. Then what we want to do is we want to regularly review analytics and find the terms that are already converting on our site. We're already getting traffic for some terms. Let's find the ones that are converting and improve those, improve the rankings of those that we know are already working. We might want to research more terms. We might want to test terms using some paid advertising. I'll show you all this in a second. And then we optimize for those terms using the factors that we've covered today. Then we analyze the conversions, and then we repeat. So this is kind of like a monthly or a quarterly exercise where we're regularly reviewing, optimizing, reporting, and then refining. So let's go through them. So setting up goals in Google Analytics, or if you're using another analytics package that has goals, set them up. In Analytics, we go to the admin section, and for our profile, we start adding goals there. And then I want to show you, when that's set up, some of the standard reports that we can use for actually tracking our goals and conversions. So this is under the traffic sources reports in Google Analytics. If we drill down into our organic search traffic, so stuff that's come from search engines, and you can see there I've chosen the goal set 1. So this particular client, this is actually one of my clients, a screenshot from one of my clients. I've blurred out the goals and some keywords just to protect their privacy. But what you can see is for this goal set, you can see down the bottom of the screen it starts listing the keywords. Now we can see that some keywords convert better than others. So the ones that are converting well, we would look at those and say, well, it's currently ranked 5. I want to improve that to 4 and 3. So that's where we put some effort into optimizing for that term. But look at the second term there. We're getting a little bit of traffic from that, but we're getting 0 conversions. So if we were just looking at traffic, we'd say, oh, this is great. But actually, once we look at conversions, we're saying, well, hang on, that's actually wasted effort. That's not ideal traffic for us. And the third one is only low. We might want to try and have a look at how we can make that convert better. Now that's with organic traffic. So that's traffic we're already ranking for and getting from the search engines. What about if we throw in a bit of paid traffic to test with? I do this with most of my clients. We set up a small AdWords campaign. It's only a small part of the traffic going to the site. But what we do, and you can see again, this is part of the standard reports, we're looking at the paid traffic, and then you can see all the search terms there. Again, this is for clients, so I've blurred them out. But look at the goal conversion rates. So we can see there that some of those are converting really well. And if you look at that 5th one, even though it's blurred, you can actually see it's quite a long term. Now, if that term we've quickly tested with AdWords, that's actually converting well for us. Well, let's try and optimize our site for that. Let's get traffic coming organically as well. So you can see the process here, just finding the keywords that are converting for us and using that in our mix. And then I guess the third way to look for keywords that we should be optimizing for is to use a keyword tool. Now there are literally hundreds of different keyword tools you can use. One of the more popular ones that you've probably used already is the Google keyword tool. It's a free tool that they provide. You can simply pop in a phrase, and on the left you'll see I've got a match type of exact. I really just want to limit it to search terms including just that phrase. And there you can see the results. Now, local monthly searches there, you can see that list. They're not big numbers, but the advantage here is that they highlight relative trends. So for example, let's say your site currently works for goal setting worksheet. You can see that actually, although that's getting a little bit of searches each month, a better term would be goal setting template. So you might just use an input like this, a bit of information to say, right, I'm actually going to tweak that page currently for goal setting worksheet to actually try and rank for the term goal setting template, and we'll boost our traffic there. Of course, we then check for conversion. So we would use the factors that we've discussed. We'd look at our title tags, and we'd set our URLs and headings, and perhaps even our calls to action in the meta description to use this information we've gathered from those reports to further optimize our site. And then, of course, we'd check conversions and make incremental improvements. So just recapping that kind of process. We must have our goals there. We'd review analytics each month, find what's converting. We'd look for more terms. We'd test terms with AdWords. We'd optimize for those, analyze the conversions, and then rinse and repeat. It's kind of an ongoing process. As I said, every month, or how often you can do it, every 3 months, etc. So that's the kind of process, that's the checklist I recommend, and I've deliberately tried to make this simple so that we can get started on it straight away. With this kind of approach, hopefully you can actually start taking action on some of these activities today. So we're drawing towards the end. I'll quickly summarize before we hand over the questions and what we've covered. So really we looked at SEO, we looked at both on-page and off-page. They're both important, but then we focused on the on-page factors and just the most important ones that we should be looking at. Out of the hundreds of factors Google looks at, here are some of the most important ones. And overall, we really had a look at SEO in place with our overall marketing strategy. And I reiterate that we need to keep our SEO activities aligned with that. We did have a look at those on-page factors, and then we've just had that quick process checklist. And I just want to leave you with this recommendation that you focus on conversions. So that's pretty much the end of the main slides. I will just highlight that I have a number of tools and resources that I've put together here. We probably don't have time, I'm guessing, to go through it, but as Licia said, she'll be making this PowerPoint slide deck available to you very soon, so you can use those tools. Each of those have help with them, so if you go to Analytics, there's a help section that will guide you through. Some tools there. Here's some browser plugins that you might want to use. They help you to analyze your current page, on-page factors. Here's some resources. If you do want to read further on SEO, these two are excellent. Just remember, don't get too distracted with reading everything about SEO. Make sure you do actually put it into action. And there's some resources here on inbound marketing that I recommend you read and be aware of. And then if you're into reading blogs, here's 4 blogs that I read and recommend. The first one is quite detailed and offers insight into SEO. SEO Moz has more tips and techniques. If you're after news, then those last 2 are valuable there, staying in touch with what Google's up to. And then finally, just a podcast that I do recommend if you listen to podcasts on the way in, on the bus, or in your car. This one is excellent by the Site Visibility guys. It covers a range of beginner through to advanced techniques. I do recommend that. And I think with that, we'll hand over to questions.
Great. So here's your chance. Fire your questions away at Craig. Go into the question panel and type your questions now. I'll give you a minute to compile your questions. Okay, let's start with your first question from Peter. How important does Craig see meta keyword tags these days?
The keyword tag itself, yeah, not important at all, is the short answer to that. In fact, I wouldn't use it for SEO at all. No harm done, but not an important factor.
Okay, the next one is from Jonathan. Some news reports indicate Google is changing its search algorithm to add weight to likes. If this is true, how does this affect SEO? How do we meet the needs of Google versus other search engines?
Okay, so it's a good question because this is the overlap of social and SEO. And at the moment, it seems that the social influence, whether that's Facebook likes or Google plus ones and other factors, maybe pinning it on Pinterest and things like that, it seems that the impact on rankings is still small. Now that will change, and I think both Google and Bing have been saying for a while that they are increasingly looking at social factors and social influences. So that's why I say social is still, it's an important part of your overall strategy, but at the moment its effect on rankings is low. Now, one thing though that does sometimes cloud these issues is when Google launched its Google Plus network, for a short time there, they've actually stopped doing it now, but initially they were promoting stuff that was shared on Google Plus, in Google Plus circles, heavily in search results. So it was actually one of the interesting times when a social factor actually had quite an influence on rankings, but that they've actually pulled back on that now. So the summary is, it's still a small part of the algorithm. It's not a major part, but I would expect, as authority signals become clearer, that it would be a bigger part of the rankings down the track. Now, does that answer the question? I think the question was, so what can we do about social? Is that what the...
How do we meet the needs of Google versus other search engines?
In terms of social? Yeah. So I think, yeah, it's a hard one to answer definitively. I'm not sure I fully understand it. But social is still important, and I think being involved in social activities is important, and it will become increasingly so.
If you need further clarification, Jonathan, just send us an email. Craig's details will be shown at the end of the presentation, or you can just type up another question.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, another question from Chris. Beside Elcom, I assume that a lot of these tips we'd need to use as a web developer.
So yes. So definitely those main factors that we highlighted, especially the title tag, if nothing else, make sure when you're developing a website you get the title tags right, or at least set them. Right is probably the wrong word. At least put your keywords in the title tags. You don't want to end up where it's got default, or I see quite often the home page of websites, the title tag just says home. You know, it's a missed opportunity. As a web developer, you really need to be doing that for your clients, yes.
Okay. Next question, excuse me, is from Scott. Is there a way to work out what SEO methods a competitor is using and to have a higher ranking in Google?
Okay, so that's a hard one to answer in a minute, but yes, there are. So the first thing that you could do is, as you would look at your own site, and remember at the start I just had that little tool that kind of showed the on-page factors that you could use for your own site. There's no reason you can't use that on your competitor's site, and that's actually a pretty good place to start. I didn't include it in the overall process, but one thing that you can do when you're looking for ideas on keywords to rank for is to look at what your competitors rank for. Then have a look at how they've set up their title tags, the keywords they've used. That's one thing. Then the other thing, and this is kind of getting a bit off the topic for today, is there are many tools that you can use to find out who's linking to your competitors. So that's probably the first place to start in terms of off-page. Use some of these tools. I actually haven't included them here, but there's these backlink tools. You can look at who's linking at your competitors, and then you can kind of approach those people and say, oh, well, can you link to me as well? So that's probably all I can say right now. I could spend a whole session on just competitive analysis, but I hope that helps. Contact me if I can give you some more specifics there.
Okay, the next question is from David. Do I need a separate SEO strategy for mobile?
So mobile is important, and for some businesses it's extremely important. Okay, and I think a lot of the time this depends on the intent of the user. As a general rule, I say the shorter your sales cycle, the more you need to be looking at a mobile strategy. And I'll tell you why. So if you're in the enterprise space and there's a long sales process and that, then people probably find out via their desktop searches of your site and things like that. But as you get into the quick sales cycle and people buying things, I think mobile is increasingly where the action is. You should also, of course, be looking at your analytics. How much mobile traffic are you getting? But well, let me give you an example. If you're, say you're a computer maker, say you're Samsung or something like that, you're probably going to have a different mobile strategy to your desktop strategy, because if people are searching your products on their desktop, they're probably more after the experience and the credibility of your brand and your product. But if they're looking on a mobile phone, their intent is more around they're checking specs or maybe pricing information. Often you see this now, people are in stores, they're actually looking at a product in the store and they're on their mobile, looking up the price checking. These are all, there's millions of examples. But in that case, where there's that shorter sales cycle, you would say, well, we really probably want to be optimizing for some things on the mobile space better there than we would on a desktop search. And Google has a separate index, a mobile index. It's very closely based on its normal index, but you can actually set your mobile site to be different. You can actually have a mobile sitemap. We looked at that XML sitemap. There's a mobile XML sitemap which gives Google hints about what stuff you want to be ranking for in the mobile space, better than desktop. I mean, location comes into it. I'll give you an example. The other day I was going to a restaurant on Saturday night, and I looked it up on my mobile. Now, I wanted to know where to park. There was parking. So it would have been nice if they'd optimized their mobile search results to highlight parking, whereas maybe for their desktop results I'm more interested in the menu or something like that. So a big topic. Do you need a different strategy? Yes, I think every company should be looking at mobile and a mobile site strategy and a mobile SEO strategy, but the shorter the sales cycle, the more important it's going to be.
Okay, thanks, Craig. We're just about out of time, so 2 more questions for you, both from Jen. Mm-hmm. So the first question is, how important are referrals from other sites?
Okay, so I would take this back to conversions. Sorry, actually there's 2 parts here. One is referrals from other sites. If they're linking to you, that's really important. So that's part of that off-page link building that I mentioned. But in terms of the traffic that you get from referral sites, I go back to this idea of conversion. Now, if that traffic is converting, then it's really important. And part of your, I guess, SEO strategy would be finding partner sites that you want to refer traffic to you, because they might be, preconditioned traffic. They've got that intent. That site recommends you. They're more likely to convert. So I would say they're very, very important. Yes.
Okay, great. So the last question for today, again, comes from Jen. Let me just find it. Which is best for your meta description, a question or a statement?
Okay, so I think that's hard. There's no right answer to that. But here's what I would suggest. Try to put yourself in the mind of a searcher and think about what their intent is. We have this idea of searcher intent. Are they just researching information? Are they looking to buy? And if so, could mentioning free shipping or something might be more to what they're thinking about. So when you're writing those descriptions, some pages on your site will be really looking for a call to action. Others might just be, we have information to help you. So it really depends on the actual page and the content on the page. And I would really try and think about the user intent. What would the user, if you were searching on that term and your page came up, what would you think you would be looking for? So no right answer. Question would be good in some cases, a statement in others.
Okay, fantastic. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to send them through to myself or Craig. Craig's contact details are shown on screen now. For those of you who we were unable to answer all your questions, we will do so separately, offline via email. So I'd like to thank Craig for joining us and coming into the office and putting together this fantastic presentation. It's certainly given me some food for thought, and hopefully it's given you guys some key action points that you can take away and work on your SEO strategy. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining us.
And have a good afternoon all. Goodbye.